This episode is brought to you by Lumina Growth Lab. At Lumina, we help professional learning and development consultants who are struggling with steady lead flow, consistent bottom line revenue, and scalability, so they can finally have healthy margins, make more strategic decisions, and ultimately take their business to the next level. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because nothing seems to work outside of word of mouth and referral-based growth. But with the right strategy and support, they're able to confidently add new channels of lead generation that create sustainable revenue and year-over-year growth for cheaper than ever because of the use of AI technologies. If that sounds like you or someone you know, connect with me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about unlocking your business's potential. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix. I'm your host, Lisanne Murphy. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. I am joined by the talented and beautiful Ingrid Hu Dahl. Ingrid, thank you so much for coming on the Marketing Matrix today.
It's such an honor. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here today.
Guys, I met Ingrid recently, but ever since then, her mission, her story has just stuck with me, and I'm really excited to introduce her to you today. Ingrid Hu Dahl is an author, speaker, and leadership coach. She's the founder of a coaching and consulting business dedicated to empowering the next generation of leaders. With over 2 decades of experience in learning and development, she brings her expertise to a wide range of industries, from corporate and media to nonprofit and social justice organizations. A TEDx speaker and a founding member of the Willie Mae Rock Camp in Brooklyn, Ingrid has a lifelong passion for amplifying underrepresented voices. She has written, filmed, and directed 2 short films exploring identity, representation, and the mixed race experience. And she has toured in multiple rock bands playing bass, guitar, synth, drums, and singing. She's lived multiple lifetimes in this lifetime, guys. Ingrid is certified by the International Coaching Federation and the Center for Creative Leadership. She is a global lecturer and speaker and an advisory board member for the Institute of Women's Leadership at Rutgers University. She lives in Sausalito, California with her wife, Courtney, and their dog, Palo Santo. Oh man, Ingrid, thank you again so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Lisanne. This is so cool. And thank you for reading my bio. Nice to be here with your listeners and viewers.
Well, I'm really excited to turn the mic over to you as soon as possible. In your own words, I'd love for you to just share, what are you doing? What's the mark you're looking to make in the world? Who do you serve? What problem do you service? Just give us kind of a background overview from your perspective of what's passionate in your world today.
I absolutely believe that as adults, we have the opportunity to unlock how we're holding onto control, insecurity, the growth path towards self-awareness and self-development. A lot of that is sort of the foundation of leadership development and learning and development. The 2 decades of experience I've had, the great pleasure of running teams at multiple different companies and corporations, but a lot of it's around how do you help clarify what is the behavior, how is it connected to the business goals, how is it connected to performance metrics, and inspire people to have fun along the journey so none of it ever feels punitive. A lot of it's around curation, experimentation, playing with so many different kinds of learning modalities for adult development. But what I really love doing currently, in addition to consulting in those areas of expertise and opportunities, is my clients coaching, specifically leadership coaching, meeting people where they are, whether they're a CEO or they're looking to sell their company and get it acquired. People who are in transitions in their careers, and folks who are absolutely people of color who try and understand, how do I survive in this company and make peace with what is more purpose-driven. So that's what I get to focus on today. And it's a real wonderful pleasure to watch people and companies have that unlock experience.
Yeah, I love that one. And I feel like, so guys, she's going to, spoiler alert, she's going to talk about a book pretty soon coming up. And I've had an opportunity to start reading it. I love hearing that from your perspective after diving into the book, because it seems like it's like your whole existence, even from your parents before you were even in the world. It's like they almost started your mission for you.
Yeah, they kind of did.
Yeah, being in a mixed race family, and I'm sure they had to fight really hard for their place in the world. Did you always have this? Has this always been innately as your mission, or Do you feel like you got, like, lost on the path of compliance and then, like, found this as a passion? Like, how did that happen for you? Does that make sense? Like, even though, like,
It
it's written in the
does.
stars, like, how did it
Yeah.
sit with you? Does that make sense?
It does, and certainly there are moments of doubt, and certainly there are moments where, I was seduced by, certain things in corporate or, I think all of that is meant to challenge you and just sort of test you to be like, "Hey, what really matters here and who am I?" A lot of people would call that values alignment. I think my parents were an amazing beginning because they were very bold to say, no, I just love this person, don't really have line of sight to how challenging this is going to be and how overexposed our relationship will become because it's different, because they've chosen love. But also, everything was different in my household, not just the multicultural part. My mom was the breadwinner, she was the tech pioneer. My dad did have his experiences starting successful businesses in his tenure, but he also was at home, like cooking and cleaning and dancing, and he loved film. He was the one who would bring me to the horse stable so I could work there and ride horses. I feel like those kinds of spaces with parents like that also helped me explore how to have my own sense of boldness and liberation. Because I kind of always had that as a kid. There's a scene in the book where I'm just a young kid walking through an airport, just like, it's fine, whatever. Or being on a horse at 5 and just going like forward when it just felt natural to me. I think growing up working at a horse stable also helped me learn a lot around you got to work really hard to do what you love. And sometimes the people who also seemingly love what they do got stuff that they're grappling with, or even the animals that you love, horses in this case, can be struggling. And what can you learn from that? And how do you connect and relate across all these different dimensions? And I found that to be very curious. I wanted to lean into that because it felt bold, it felt risky, and it felt deeply human. Like there's a humility and an egolessness around having to let go of some of the things we've learned. And I've really worked hard on that.
There's so many lessons to take from nature and
Mm.
from animals, like we're all interconnected, right? I love that so much. There's still a lot of emotion and tension around it. Like, what's been the biggest struggle for you leaning into that, where it's such a emotional space? Like, what's been the biggest struggle navigating that?
My own realization is that I'm deeply imperfect. I make a lot of mistakes. I have hurt people's feelings along the way, been misunderstood. And how do I learn and then share what I've learned for others? My mom, one of the things I was really surprised by is I think just because we had an age difference, like a generational gap, I assumed that my experience as a woman, a queer woman of color in corporate America, would be very different than my mom's. Like, surely there would be less sexism. Surely there'd be more opportunities to climb the ladder. Surely there wouldn't be examples of hiring like a white man, so that this female of color can advance. And I was really surprised that actually it wasn't that dissimilar. And both my mom and I experienced moments in our careers where we were deeply misunderstood, where our transformational leadership was crushed, being kind of swallowed whole and spat out. And I say that not to be dramatic, but it's a truth. That bamboo ceiling is real. And one of the things that I experienced in my career too that I think resonates with how important this kind of work is to connect and relate across difference, to have that self and social awareness and relationship management. Like, how do we do that successfully so that teams can thrive and be innovative and high performing? I was surprised that we as people of color can not around some of these issues and systems of oppression in contact with one another. And we have to, it's not always like polite. It's messy. And getting in there and unraveling like bias and stereotype and assumptions and trying to like, you were talking about the emotions, like there's so much microaggressions and triggering that's happening just for anyone, let alone all of those intersections and layers of lived experience that are very harmful. It's not
Mm,
a given. You have to
mm,
choose to participate in belonging as a given.
mm.
And that choice to participate in belonging as a given takes a tremendous amount of effort and energy, and bravery and boldness. So, a lot of my book is reminding people that perhaps when you look back at your journey, your childhood, you'll see the gems that show you have been this way your whole life, and to embody that and to give a lot of love and care to that so it can breathe and expand and maybe even lead you.
I love that. Now, do you work mostly with people of color or people in like the LGBTQ community, or do you also work with people that are more mainstream, like a white male that wants to understand how to work more inclusively? Like, tell me about who you work with.
Yeah, it ranges. I've definitely had white male CEOs like trying to tap into, no, I want to be inclusive, which is great. And having a hard time understanding, like, I believe that I'm listening. What's happening? I'm like, well, let me give you an example. Or let's test this theory. And oftentimes they're not listening, but they believe that they're good listeners, right? There are several people of color who are also listening more to their internal limiting beliefs than what's actually being heard or being curious about what's actually being said. So I find that regardless of the audience or my client base, because it stretches, there's always something very human and baseline, and it tends to be listening, and it tends to be better understanding our beliefs, our assumptions, our perceptions of what's happening, and then what choices we have to react and respond to them. And hopefully, those reactions, responses mirror coaching, which is basically leaning in, listening and leading with curiosity, like to oneself and to others. I find that every client of mine would benefit from just slowing down. I also was there. I worked at Mach 5, nothing was stopping me. It was like deliver, deliver, deliver. And it came at a cost. And it was a hard learning experience to slow down. But man, is that an incredibly empowering place to be in, a centered, calm, grounded.
I love that. Yeah, it reminds me, just yesterday I was in a session with my therapist and I was
Mm,
describing a situation that I'm feeling, and we spent literally the entire hour together just uncovering the beliefs that were dictating my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions towards the situation. Because yeah, I think sometimes we're unconscious about the beliefs that are dictating all of that and assuming that it's reality, right?
yeah.
So I love that. It's so, so, so powerful. So
Well,
powerful.
good work on that. That sounds like a fantastic session.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was good. It gave me a lot to think about. I still have a lot to unpack with it for sure.
Good.
For
That's
sure.
great.
Okay, so you've written and spoken about the radical act of being seen and hidden leadership superpowers, and those are really, really powerful ideas. How do you help leaders move toward that visibility with intention and courage?
I like to remind folks about their inner rebellion. Most people will recall, oh, yeah, when I was a teenager, I felt rebellious, blah, blah, blah. What does that look like today? What does your inner rebel, your inner teenager say about this situation? Usually it's the thing that you feel like you can't say as an adult. You have to monitor what you're saying and make it palpable to others. But when you kind of are hearing what that more badass version of you is saying, it's not quite a gut. It's more about, the bolder version, the more risky version of your truth is this. And I think it's important to remember that as adults, we don't have to confine ourselves to the expectations of being an adult. It can feel really constricting. And if the equation is that like a growth mindset and pushing out of our comfort zone, which requires going into fear and getting on the other side of fear to grow, if that is the equation, we need to be doing that all the time. And it can't be something where it feels like a pressure valve, because that's not really going to make us grow. It's just like triggering the amygdala, and getting a lot of hormones that we don't need to be like over full with. Like cortisol is very addictive. So I watch clients who tend to be addictive or workaholics around stress, but we can notice that and let go of it. And what would the rebellious teen say? They'd probably be like, what? Who cares about this? Like, this is the thing you should be focusing on. And if it's seen in a way of shared partnership, that voice is not being hard on you. It's not judging you. It's to cheer you on and say, you got this, challenge that status quo. You've been wanting to do it. You got this. And this is one life to live, so go for it. Now, I understand there's so many people who are probably listening or watching who are like, well, I'm not in a position where I can do that. I need my job. I've got, bills to pay. I'm not saying, rip the band-aid and say something that's like drastic or harmful. I mean that in your life, if there's something that's pulsating, that's more purpose driven, and you're holding it back with these kinds of expectations and confines and not digging into and allowing it to breathe, those are the opportunities to continue to grow, regardless of real or perceived constraints.
I love that. I love that. So powerful, and it really resonates with me personally, honestly. In a lot of the conversations and writing that I'm doing for myself.
Hmm.
So I want to talk about the book for a moment, right? Because that's kind
Hey,
of the
let's
cover of the
talk
show
about
here.
her.
So I'd love to for you to share what was the function of this book for you personally as well as professionally, and what are your hopes for it? Like what do you hope
Love
the
that.
book does for you?
Yeah. Gosh, I wasn't necessarily set out to be an author. I'm excited that I now am. Like, that's like ooh, that's new. And it's exciting to be a beginner at things. I very much was processing my mother's death. She died of cancer 3 years ago. And couple months later, I just kind of had this like surge of energy that felt compelled to write my story, which would, of course, include hers. There was no more time for her to write her story. And there probably is like more stories to be shared because I found a lot of my mom's journals. They're like half written in Chinese, half written in English. So that's quite the task to uncover this complex, incredible character, this person, this human. I think with the book, it's interesting. People have asked, like, oh, Ingrid, 20 years experience, why not write like a leadership development or learning and development book? I'm like, I think it's important to share and lay bare who I am first and who I've become because of these sort of rings of fire. And that will make more sense if and when people read and listen to the book, and to become that pure gold, which is a really important idiom throughout. I'm really hoping that people read this book and they feel compelled to connect with people differently, to be like, oh, wow, I never realized asking that question, what are you or where are your people from, are so harmful. Like, am I really curious? If I am, this is interesting. This author's provided a different approach or lens for me because I invite people in the book to really sit through some of these like difficult moments and not run from them, but to really sit with them, slow things down, feel the feelings, question the questions. That exposure to slow down moments of xenophobia, I hope share tactics for people in the future. So not only do I want the book to help like connect us back to our humanity, because I do feel like the story can help us with that, to also encourage forgiveness, encourage love, encourage boldness within that space. But for me, I would love to use this book as a tool for my own amplification of why these stories and why bold living is important. So I want to be on stages, to be a guest speaker, to have opportunities where I can like just amplify the book and the story. And I've actually loved, I've had like 16 events so far and several corporate engagements, and the connection and the tears that I've had with people along this short journey already has been deeply meaningful. And I would love to see that amplified in the future. Would I also like more clients and consulting gigs out of this exposure? Absolutely. I think putting yourself and laying bare says a lot about the professional that you engage with. And I felt like this was the right place to begin, not showing up as here's what I've learned from 20 years experience. It's here's who I've become because of this journey.
I love that. Were there things that you learned about yourself that
Yes,
have like influenced how you
absolutely.
approach your relationships, whether they're personal or professional?
Yes, I absolutely recognize that my mom and I are very similar. So my perception of her being kind of broken or a martyr, I'm not that far off. I've done a lot of healing, thank goodness, from that experience. But she's also very bold. I'm bold. It showed up differently. Absolutely learned kind of the process of being, a beginner, and also seeing how silence plays such a big, like, the biggest awareness perhaps in this grief story, right? And processing grief through writing this like entire, like, here's what's happened in my life was how silent some of these experiences were. Like, I didn't go home and tell my parents about bullying, and I didn't share all of this kind of experiences with others in this way. And suddenly here it is in this book, bared to everybody, which I think is fantastic. But I was surprised how silent it was, how alone it actually felt growing up by going back in time and sitting with my younger kid self, being a kindergartner at that bus stop and being like, oh my God, there was a lot going on in my mind, but I didn't process it outwardly, which is surprising because I am an outward processor today. But back then, it wasn't that way. So just being really kind to myself and loving and just being like, wow, now it's time to share all that so it's no longer so quiet.
I love that concept. Like you gave voice to the pieces of your path that didn't have a voice back then.
Yeah, that's really well said. You said it better. That's great.
Really, really powerful. Very, very powerful. I love that. Okay, so talk to me about your I talk to people in the professional and learning development space and the management consulting space like all day long. But there's something different about you, and I would love to hear from your perspective. What's something that you do differently than most in your industry?
I am very much me in my professional and personal. There is no difference. So I'm going to be very open and transparent, process out loud, share when I don't know something, when I've made a mistake, when I need help. I've learned that. I don't hold a bar of perfection because that doesn't exist. I show up and I really want to get to know people. Like, I bring my coaching lens to how I lead teams. I care about people, want to better understand what makes them feel motivated, things that might not have been shared before, discoveries that are there to be discovered, and witness that and be a partner in that journey. I really don't play the game. There are a lot of politics. Somebody was telling me the other day, I was taking this exam and they're like, oh yeah, you got to learn like the intricacies of the trick and how these kinds of things, there's an equation. It's the second time now I've used that, but there can be, and it's very confusing for a lot of people. I'm not saying I see the blueprint of that, but I know it exists, and I don't really play into it, which I think has cost me some of the future ladder rungs. But that is a risk I'd prefer, to still be me and to still be a challenging the status quo, rebellious kind of leader who has a ton of heart and cares a lot. So I lead with tremendous empathy. And maybe one of the things that my team, I miss them from my last role, but they will always say like, no, Ingrid, you're an empathetic listener. And you make it so that not only do we feel safe, but there's this culture of reliability that's shared. It's not accountability. Accountability is like, shit, I got to do this because I'm being held accountable. It's a different relationship when you feel like I want to be reliable to my team because I know they've got me too. They're supporting me. My leader's always got my back. And they're going to share what they can share because I am transparent, maybe to a fault, but the fault is then on my back, not on my team's.
Mm, mm.
I feel like I learned that from my mom. She really took care of her team. It was 100 software engineers. When cuts were happening, she put herself and her own role on the chopping block to save teams who she cared about. And she knew they had families. She had one too, but for her, it was protecting her team. And I don't see a lot of people who care in that way. I'm not saying you should always just like martyr yourself. My mom was kind of strong in that way, in the martyrdom, but I certainly think you got to be a bold, risk-taking leader, even if it's at a cost to you.
Mm. Well, and I love it. Really goes back to like what you were talking about in the beginning. It comes down to, you use the phrase values alignment, right? Like you can do anything that is culture or counterculture as long as it aligns with your values, right? So
Mm,
understanding that foundation of your values so that you know when to take risks, right? And I love how you're also like being honest about your mom's martyrdom complex, that maybe
hmm
sometimes there were some things that she did that perhaps strategically may not have been the wisest choice, right?
Totally.
But yeah, so that's something I think a lot about, is like, what are the values that should be guiding this decision in this moment?
Mm, mm,
Because I think there's, I mean the phrase like there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Like, there's multiple it's like, probably not the best, like, use, but it's the idiom, right? But there's a lot of ways to do anything, right? And so, I think sometimes we get caught up in what is the best way, when
Mm,
really it's like, what are the values that need to be upheld and aligned in this situation for the best outcome for all involved?
yeah, I agree. I also think as leaders, there's a way to sprinkle among values alignment moments of joy and play. Like, I think we forget that that actually is enjoyable to
Mm,
people. So, as leaders, how can you create that? Like spontaneity, some play, some moment of just being more personable or levity. Sometimes when I find that there's these huge strategic moments where there's a bit of like forced pause, and people will probably know what I mean. Like, oh, there's a huge strategic shift or something's about to get announced. I, as a leader, try to use that space for my team to go explore, to take more breaks, to spend time with their kids if they have them and their family, to go out in nature and provide not a permission, but an invitation to, instead of sitting in waiting, pause, fear, use that as a spark of creativity and discovery. Not a lot of people, I think, do that, or they want to create busy work. The worst is like creating busy work just for the sake of filling time. It's like when somebody's just filling airtime. What is a meaningful use of those times? And when things are high stress and it's like, oh, wow, we have to do what feels like the impossible, being very clear about what's going to help each person across the team be successful and doing everything you can to make that the conditions for that to occur. Um, that's your goal then as a leader. So pivoting, I find that a lot of leaders are like only focused on, I only work with senior directors and above. And you're like, whoa, that's not, that doesn't feel inclusive. That doesn't feel like you could be missing a lot of really great brilliance and innovation and input and ideas. Let's absolutely like not just up, down, but across. Like, when's
mm,
the last time we've hung out with like sales, product, designers, operations? Like, that's a lot of camaraderie for us to learn. I think with learning and development too, it's like, gosh, there's so much possibility to work in partnership with, more kind of innovative teams. And we're missing those opportunities for deeper connection
mm,
and weaving. And to me, that's like a powerful space as opposed to like just sitting in the space of playing politics. To
yeah.
me, that's a real waste of time.
Ah, I love that. Such a powerful perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I'm trying to figure out how to blend learning and development, which has a rich background and foundation in history and, impact and metrics, like, yes, with coaching and how we could use like agents to help the process and meet people where they are to shift behavior change. Like when I think back several years when we were trying to solve for Kirkpatrick level 3, right? How do you get your metrics and your learning solutions to actually go into this space where it's like pushing behavior change and then tracking behavior change? As facilitators, we can't just always meet people where they are. And usually people don't have the budgets to have, a weekly coach for every single person who's going through an experience. That would be great, right? Oh my God, what a benefit. One of the biggest benefits I've had in my corporate experience was having a coach every week for a year. So much happened. It was amazing. But I do think connecting those spaces using AI really thoughtfully could be an interesting place for the scale of meeting people where they are and training AI to help coach people through the learning objectives, the outcomes, the tools, helping them use the tools, helping them model the tools. And when the moments where they're like, I need help, this just happened, help me unpack this, the AI agents have what have they've been trained to do, which is to meet somebody where they are at and help them along that journey. I'd love to crack that. I'd love if somebody was interested in partnering with me on that, because I do feel like that is the next shift in learning and development is working in partnership, not just AI for AI's sake, but truly the coaching, the behavior shift, the leadership development that's going to stick and be with people, not just these one-off experiences.
I love that. Yeah, it's create lasting change, right? Not just like a hurrah weekend and then old behaviors resume. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. I love that so much. Thank you
I'd be
so
honored.
much for bringing your expertise and your passion and your experience to the marketing matrix today. It really has been such a joy to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's been a real honor. Thank you for loving reading my story.
I'm
Appreciate it.
excited to continue to dive in. So for the listeners, what is the best way to get in contact with you or reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you just put my full name, ingridhudahl.com, you'll get my sort of business facing website. And if you put the book title, Sun Shining on Morning Snow, in a URL, you'll get all the information about the book. So I encourage listeners and, of course, viewers to go do that and please connect with me.
Awesome. I love that, guys. I'm going to put those links in the episode notes so you can just go directly there. And Ingrid, thank you so much for bringing everything you had to the show today. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Absolutely loved connecting with you. Thank you.